Welcome to the Resistance and Renewal podcast. My name is Emily Manginelli. Do you want me to introduce you?
I don't need an introduction.
This is my husband. He doesn't need an introduction. We're so glad you're here.
Start this podcast. We are really glad you're here. Mom, I love you. This is one of our faithful listeners. I'm really excited. My name is Phil. Yes, I can introduce myself. I'm really excited for today's podcast because it's going to be a little bit different. And it's something that I think is in our heart. Though I know as soon as I say this, there's going to be people who are like, delete,
next.
Checking out. Which is actually taking some time to slow down on a single conversation that's really important. And walking through it to the point where we can have a greater understanding as followers of Jesus, not just of what this piece of our life is meant to be, but how to hold it, how to understand it, the theology behind it, the invitation of it, but then also how to put it in practice.
Yeah.
Because I think this is one of the core real desires of our heart, and the core desires of our heart, just even in this podcast, is to actually equip us to take ground. That as followers of Jesus in the secular world, there is this tension that we're always living in, but it's not just about understanding that tension or having kind of good thoughts in the midst of it. It's how do we actually take ground and move forward? And it was really interesting because I was thinking about, even in this podcast today, the kind of focus was what to us is what are the most urgent, most important kind of conversations connected to our cultural moment we could have. And while my mind went lots of places, my mind went to places around AI, which I think are conversations we need to have, conversations around truth and war and stuff. I just literally, what are the single weightiest moments we're living in that would be helpful to walk people through? Then there are many. I came back to something that I believe is the most important, though it's going to feel pretty timeless, which is just forgiveness. I think more important than almost understanding anything else. I believe that my heart is aching because I think forgiveness, it's a strange thing where it is one of the most central realities to the kingdom of God, to Jesus and our life with Jesus, to the gospel.
It's what the gospel is forgiveness is
and I find it one of the
available.
more confused things that people hold, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But all that to say, we get to lean into something I'm really excited to talk through, and I'm excited because we're going to be the two of us today, and just get to lean in. So
guestless.
Okay, so here's my question to you. Here's where I want to start. What is the dumbest thing that you've had to genuinely go, I need to forgive Phil for this? There's lots of real stuff, and we can get into real stuff. But you were just it's dumb, it's petty, but I actually had to operate in forgiveness. Do you have one?
I'm sure. Well, okay. So I have many character flaws, always trying to work them out unto Jesus. Phil, let's back up. You always talk about how a character strength has every mountain has a valley.
Yes.
If you have a character strength, there is a dark side, not necessarily evil, but a downside to it,
Yes.
or it wouldn't be a strength.
Right.
You would just be a totally flat plane with no strengths. But if you have a strength, it's going to have a valley.
Right.
Okay. So one of my strengths is that I let things go very, very easily.
Remarkably easy.
Too easily for Phil's liking. I genuinely don't get hurt very often.
No.
And I get over things really fast. Now, The valley side of that is several things. One, I'm not quite sure when I hurt people. Sometimes Phil will be like, that was hurtful. I'm like, well, it wouldn't have hurt me. And I've had to grow in being like, that doesn't count. And then in maybe trying to overcorrect that, sometimes I am so afraid I'm going to hurt someone because I don't know where the hurt line is that I won't say anything. And then you'll be like, I think you need to say something. I'm like, wow, I was afraid it would hurt them. And so just growing in that maturity. But there is a benefit that I do let things go. So all that to say, I'm sure I could find one, but I really do forgive and forget probably to a fault.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll even be like, Emily, do you remember what happened? I'm like,
no, legitimately, there is a tension at times knowing whether you're functioning in like your God-given superpower or your massive disassociative ability.
Yes.
Because I think I've experienced both.
Yes. Disassociating is quite...
We could do a whole podcast on the strengths of disassociation.
It is quite a... defense mechanism.
Defense, but there's a lot of even pieces of that because there are really broken parts of that even, and there are really, really helpful, godly, right places of that, and okay.
Well, I would just say to answer the question, I think there are seasons in our life and in our marriage where, you would say something that actually like. I felt insulted by. Mm-hmm. And I just had to genuinely forgive you. Like either one, you never try to be mean. So that I knew that was never the reason. So then it's either like, oh, he perceives something rightly, in which case that stinks. I need to look at myself in the mirror, or he's perceiving something wrongly and I need to confront him on it. But regardless, I mean, I think there's been things, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm sorry, babe.
Yeah. But it puts you perfectly on display.
I've had to forgive you a lot, I'm sure. I'm sure
you have. I'm pretty wonderful, though. So
yeah, you are.
I think it's fair.
Also, you make up very quickly
when
you do hurt me or you say something or you do something that is hurtful. So that's part of it. There's rarely a time I feel like there's a big thing that Phil has not made right. And I'm wrestling through unforgiveness.
Right. Well, and even the real challenge for us in lots of seasons were because I think we're both in our own ways. We demonstrate them differently, but quick to do what we think is right. Mm-hmm. The problem is when we're not on the same page about what that is.
Right. And asking for, I mean, like when you asked me to read that book that said, what was it called? When sorry isn't enough.
When sorry isn't enough. This is a great moment in our story, filled with lots of other stories. But it is also, it's funny because it was
a big deal.
It was a big deal.
That you did not feel, and we'll get into if you can forgive if someone hasn't repented, right? But within a marriage, it is important that the person who is wrong repents like that because reconciliation is necessary in a marriage. But you had very specific ways about what my repentance would look like. Mm-hmm.
There are some, but whether we get into some of these stories, there was like a massive moment in our life where I don't even remember what had happened. I don't think it was big or at all. It was just like a culminating story. Mm-hmm. And you said, I'm sorry, as you would, which was quite unemotional, but you said those words. And I remember looking at you and go, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. It was actually like this was like the like precipice of us walking through probably the most painful and some of the like God's greatest like transformation in our own story. But I remember I standing in the kitchen looking and like, I don't believe you. And I think it was shocking to both of us because I had never said something like that. And it was just this moment though of telling even this other story of forgiveness that we'll get into, which is that we can so easily not understand the differences between forgiveness and reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And one of the great traps we all fall in, and I fell in it deep. There were, I think you would say, places you did need to grow in being a person of communicating repentance and the work of restoration. I think you've owned that. Am I right?
No, well, yeah, I'm just smiling because I'm thinking about the book.
Yeah.
And I did read it eventually, which I didn't read it right away, which hurt you even more. Anyways,
there's a lot.
I read it and it's like, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like there's 4 steps, right? You have to say I was wrong. Mm-hmm. You have to say I am sorry.
I'm not sure.
You have to say, will you forgive me? And you have to say, what can I do to make it right? It was kind of this like, you have to do these 4 things. And I remember being like, give me a break. No one needs to say all of those things. Just like if someone came up to me and repented
now,
four
whenever
steps,
I tell you
I would be like,
about the challenges I've experienced in my marriage, at least you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Stop talking to me. I forgive you.
Yes. I'm not even, I think the book is actually helpful.
No, I think it was a good book. You should read it. I just felt like it was a little bit of overkill. And Phil didn't.
I think it'd be interesting for us to read in this season.
It?
Because I don't think either of us could read it without our own personal agenda that we were working through. But my point is actually not even, but you've owned that was a part of our dynamic. But the part of the dynamic I couldn't see, which was that because when I am aware I'm wrong, I feel it. I embody it not by choice.
How do you embody it? What emotions? How do you carry conviction or guilt?
Oh, I mean, I feel grief. Like I feel this like longing to immediately make it right as much as I can. I feel the desire to like tell you that I see it. Like I
that is very, very helpful.
I want to be quick to whatever because I do stumble into hurting people without intention, but sometimes one of the things I've learned about my life, it's easy to hide behind that though. And that's one of the things I've had to grow in is actually just coming, it's that. So I have that desire to tell, and I don't feel not necessarily disconnect, but certainly it is that, like I want to show up to own so that we can move back towards connection. So,
and you know how I embody it, you do know, is anger, which is very unfortunate for you.
Anger and distance and space and time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of
that's where and shame comes in. But like when I know I'm wrong, I'm just furious.
So this
for a little bit.
This led to actually a long,
and you pushing on a need for an apology right away gets.
I had no idea, and to be fair to me, who would?
Yeah, and also I'm not saying it's a great reason. No, it's just interesting our different responses. We've grown
so much in it. Is actually when you recognized that you had made a mistake, it did not embody itself like compassion.
Yes,
it didn't embody itself like sorrow. You didn't communicate it quickly. You retreated and were angry. And not
at myself,
not towards me, but I didn't know that, so it took us a long time. But the point of the story that I'm trying to get to is that I made the litmus test of forgiveness me or repentance me. Because what I felt was so sincere.
Yeah.
When I was
how could this not be universal?
Sure.
It feels like a very normal thing to expect someone who's repentant to act sorrowful.
Yeah. But it was that place of going, actually, every time we got into whatever we got into, it was, if Emily doesn't do it like me, she's not really doing it.
Yeah.
And what a lie that I put over you for a long time.
And that also was something that did hurt me, but it's really hard. Like in a cycle that we got in, this is going to turn into a marriage podcast. A cycle that we got in is that I would hurt you, you would come back with these demands for forgiveness, and that would hurt me. But then if I flipped it back to like how you hurt me, then you would be like, the original thing that we were talking about is getting ignored. And it was just this cycle of like, how do I go tell you that accusation hurt me when I still haven't, in your eyes, even made right how I hurt you? It felt like I was always deflecting. And
can I tell you the dumbest thing you ever got mad at me for?
Yeah, and I would love to know that. And then I guess I have to also ask something you had to forgive me for.
So, and you'll know it pretty immediately. It's before we were married.
The one thing that I got mad at you about?
Yeah. So I'll tell the story.
Something about laundry?
So
wasn't it? Did you ask me to?
So the set of the story doesn't matter.
But
we had borrowed,
we
had friends that were out of town and had, I'd been able to stay at their place because I was in communal living, and they were coming back and we were cleaning up. And
in Montana?
And you were in a tough season. and for lots of other reasons that I didn't really understand. And Emily feels this, she can, especially this pressure. And I still remember there are needs that you had that I certainly wasn't ministering to, or didn't even see or understand, or you knew how to communicate. So there was a lot of emotions going on, but she was feeling the pressure of getting
making it right.
the room clean. And it wasn't that just like we hadn't used much of it, but we wanted to bless them. We wanted to kind of. So I think you were doing the laundry, but you walked in, and I'm literally in the bathtub, not taking a bath, on my hands and knees, scrubbing their bathtub, and you yell at me, "Why aren't you helping me?" and walk out the door.
I have no memory of that, but I believe you.
It was one of the most confusing moments of my life. And it was really funny. It wasn't funny at the moment. I was like, what planet am I in? But there were other things you had asked me to help carry that I hadn't. And it was just this delayed moment of frustration where you give the wrong
also,
words at the wrong time. But it was really funny.
Listen, that tracks very much with an Emily response 25 years ago. I will also say we were getting married in a few months, so I'd gone on birth control for the first time in my life. And let's just all take a moment of silence for the hormonal changes that neither of us had ever witnessed before.
We need like a text line
control
for every new husband to be like, what is happening?
Yeah, but also I think, some people have been on birth control for a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't affect everybody the same way.
We did not stay with that.
Things got better.
Yeah.
Later on.
And I stopped taking it.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Now we have 4 kids.
So okay, tell me, or what you said you wanted to ask me a question.
Well, I was just saying it's maybe fair that
actually dive in.
Yeah, like what did you have to, one thing you'd forgive me for? It has to stay silly.
One dumb thing.
Lighthearted. I'm also pretty great.
You are pretty great. You're pretty great. I remember one time I got mad that you came to my softball game, and when I was at bat, you were on your phone the whole time. And it felt pretty dumb, but I was pretty upset.
Like in Taiwan or like a year ago? Here. Was it here?
It was like 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sorry, babe.
I was at bat. I was at bat. You couldn't even look up when I was at bat.
Well, it's hard to pay
I have so little I can do
many
to
people.
impress you these days. You know what I mean?
Well, did you hit it?
I did. That's why I was upset.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you struck out, you would probably be glad that I wasn't looking.
Yeah. That never happens.
Never happens
especially
in adult
softball. I mean, I have plenty of games that I'm not doing great, but
more of a pop fly. That's kind of.
This is what I've learned about the sadness of growing up with your one talent being something like baseball. You can never show it off to people you're trying to impress. I remember going to college and hating everybody that could play a guitar. So I'm like,
right.
Here
you can just do it in the
look
quad.
Look, hey girls, here I'm playing this guitar.
But you could play the guitar.
Hey, can I find 8 other people to show you the one thing I'm good at? Anyways.
You're pretty good at basketball.
I forgive you.
Thanks, babe. I'm sorry. I was on my phone.
I think that's the first time you said that.
Did you tell me you hurt your feelings?
I have no memory. It was not a big deal.
You have some memory.
Yes, I have some memory. I think I was also aware at the moment it was pretty dumb. I'm really
sorry.
Just learn.
Have I changed in the past few seasons of softball?
Yeah. Yes. You've changed. I mean,
do I watch you more when you're at bat?
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes I cheer for you, and I can tell you don't like it.
Yeah, because I'm in a slump.
Yeah.
All right. You're the best.
Thank you.
But I will say this. Well, this podcast is not about marriage. It's about principles of forgiveness, though. If you're married, you get that the two things go hand in hand. But I would just say, man, we've been married. We'll be married 22 years in August, so very soon. And I love this quote, Anne Lamont. She says, earth is forgiveness school. But the reality is, so much of marriage is the sacred partnership of God and your spouse to help you become more like Jesus.
Yeah.
And I do think that probably the greatest training ground of becoming a forgiver, a real forgiver, the training ground of mature forgiveness for those who are married is going to be primarily in their marriage, because you always feel the weight of the decisions of the people you love the most.
Yeah.
And I love you the most. And so the smallest things could have the greatest impact. Or I'm also living with you in my greatest unknown insecurities or desires. And it's actually where we work through all of those things, that it's going to empower us all those other places. But so I say that to those who are married, go, do not be surprised where your marriage becomes forgiveness school, and actually go win. Yeah. Go get some A's.
Well, I think, okay, so I can see your point about marriage being this training ground for it because of the intimacy, vulnerability, closeness, shared life experience. Also, for people not in that relationship, I almost think it's harder because you can write people off. Like, it's like, it is actually, and I don't know if it's hard or easier. I don't know the right language, but like it takes more intentionality.
Yep.
It takes more maybe courage, trust in the Lord to be as actively forgiving people you're not in a sacred union with, because if they leave, it's you know what I mean? Like, it's not in your face every day that there's divided relationship.
Goes back to that quote that I forget who said it, but there's only two things hard enough to make you like Jesus: marriage or singleness. And they're different, but they present in every way the level of challenges that if we'll let God be in the midst of them, which we're going to actually even look at in forgiveness, about God in the midst of things we would never choose to happen in our lives, they have the power to do the most glorious things. So let's talk forgiveness.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's biblical passages. There's also a theology of forgiveness. I think most of us have heard the theology of forgiveness. Like, that's what a pastor is going to maybe pull out a verse. Yes. But I think that most people have their understanding of what forgiveness is holistically.
Yes.
So, like, theologically, and we could start theologically, then go to the passages, start with the passages.
Well, here's what I think would be helpful is actually just starting with actually just what forgiveness isn't.
Yeah.
Because I do think this is where we have to almost undo it from all of these false ideas.
Right.
To begin to rebuild it into the vision of what it really is and what Jesus has for us. And I think some of the reasons that we have bad teaching on this, I think we probably don't even have a lot of teaching on it. It's almost like one of the assumed, it's so central to Christianity. It's one of those words that we just float around, like a word like gospel, which is so central, but it's just turns into a bumper sticker rather than like this foundational part of us. And so for me, what I've learned, and I wrote a few of these down. So I think the first thing we have to understand is that forgiveness is not a feeling. And we're going to talk through that more, but I think this is one of the greatest places of mistake that people enter into.
Like, I can't forgive them if I'm still angry.
Yeah, or that both that to forgive requires an emotional desire to it.
Yeah.
Or that to forgive is actually the immediate change of a state of feeling, or even this reality of I'm going to wait until some kind of emotional thing takes place in my life. Or people who have moved into the journey of forgiveness, but they're still dealing with feelings, and they're like, well, maybe I didn't do it, or how do I do it, or what in the world is this? I think when we make forgiveness a feeling, and certainly true forgiveness will eventually evidence itself in our feelings. It's not to say there aren't overlaps. Forgiveness is not a feeling, and I think that's important. I think second, I think forgiveness is not reconciliation, and this is a huge thing. Now, forgiveness, the desire of God is always reconciliation. Forgiveness is a place where the longing of God for the potential reality of reconciliation to take place.
Right.
It's undeniable.
It's a necessary for reconciliation, but it's not the same as it.
No, and if we don't understand that, one, if we make forgiveness and reconciliation required, well, first, you're then going to feel the commands of Jesus to potentially pull you back into situations you should not reconcile into. What do you do if you're dealing with lack of forgiveness for somebody you have no relationship with or has passed away?
Right.
I think what we have to understand when we have a true vision of forgiveness is always possible. And that's a massive statement to say, because there are great evils in the world and great evil things have happened to people. But forgiveness is actually always possible, even when reconciliation isn't or shouldn't be. And I think one of these Christian tropes that to be a forgiver means to be a doormat is part of the reason we wrestle with it. And I don't think it's true. So I think that, and then, I think the last thing that we really misunderstand is that we think forgiveness is like a light switch. And there's I think there is a form of truth in it, which we'll talk when we get to true forgiveness. But we have this idea of I just push the light switch of forgiveness and then I move on.
And everything should change.
Instantly. Or I said a word, and
but did you do the 4 things?
You did do the 4 things. I said a word, and I just think it's important to name that, because I'll tell you, in my own life, but as a pastor, this is the central thing I deal with. And I talk with people through stories around pain and forgiveness more than anything else.
Yeah.
It just is and I even think in our cultural moment, things that are in front of us that may not feel like they have to do with forgiveness. If we don't get forgiveness, what chance do we stand to walk through them?
Yeah.
We have to reclaim this. I think the myths of forgiveness are more known. People believe them more than they actually believe the truth of what forgiveness really is.
So you talk about in your pastoral meetings that this comes up, and this has come up in meetings I've had. How often do you hear people say, I actually don't want to forgive them? That's one thing that I think has surprised me. And I don't think it's I think it's a very normal feeling, actually.
Yeah.
And so maybe talk through what people think forgiveness is and why they don't. I mean, in my perspective, people don't want to forgive. One, because maybe they'll feel like it's a doormat. That means what they did is okay,
right.
Which is the lie.
Justifying
Myth.
An action.
Right.
That
If I forgive
justified.
it. And then the second lie they believe, if I forgive them, there'll be no justice for their thing. If I forgive them, my pain isn't valid. That's a big one.
Yeah, it is.
If I forgive you, it shows you that what I'm feeling isn't important. Or the last one, sadly, which I've heard from a lot of believers, once I dig, is I don't want to forgive them because you kind of do want them to suffer a little bit for what they've done for you. Yeah. Or done to you.
Yeah.
And so it's not even what is forgiveness? It's oh my gosh, how do we get to the place where we want to forgive?
Right. Well, and I think there's the two truths in that is part of the reason as Christians that when we get stuck there and we don't want to forgive, it is because we have made it's connected to all the lies we believe about forgiveness.
Right.
And part of what's happening is that person's still hurting me. Actually, it's not even a one and done. I don't even know if they're still even sorry.
Right, that's a big
I don't
thing.
even know if reconciliation. And you're telling me I need to forgive them, and we don't want to forgive them. But what we're actually saying is I don't want to go right back into a situation where I think that's going to happen again. And that's a fair feeling that we don't know how to often work through. But I also think we have to know this, right? This is foundation. In me is the curse of Adam and the resurrection of Jesus. My body is cursed. My spirit is resurrected. And until Jesus comes, those two natures will live in me. Now, the spirit has more authority. I am yielded to it. My flesh is not its equal, but it is there, right? Mm-hmm. Romans 6, 7, 8. But I think we have to understand in that is there is just always a place we'll wrestle through of wanting justice on our own terms. Right. Because it is part of true forgiveness is a releasing of control that it's God's to deal with.
Exactly. So forgiveness doesn't mean there isn't justice. Forgiveness is saying I trust God's justice. And that's, I think, where if you press most believers that they get to and they're I don't actually trust God's justice because what if he forgives them too?
Yeah.
Guess what? He will.
It's Jonah.
Now you're wrestling with the character of God.
Yeah.
Forgiveness and why Jesus talks about it, why it's hard, because it's not natural. You literally have to wrestle through the character of God being something you maybe wish it weren't. And Jesus trying to get people to be but you are a forgiven one as well. And this hypocrisy that we all carry.
It's painful.
That I deserve something that you don't deserve. I deserve it when I go to God for it, and I don't give it when you come to me for it. And that's exactly the parable of the servant that Jesus talks about in Matthew 18. And it is. I mean, it's just, I see it all the time.
Well, and even, right, it's the entire concept of the book of Jonah. Mm-hmm. Jonah runs away from assignment because he knows what God's like.
Yeah.
He's like, I know you're merciful. If you're going to give them a chance at repentance, there's a chance you're going to follow through on it. Mm-hmm. I know what you're like, and they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And I even think that story is really important because Nineveh's evil.
Yes, they didn't deserve it. They didn't
deserve it. And I think we'll never understand forgiveness without these two pictures. One, I'm pretty evil.
Well,
the Christian Pharisaical thing that can brew in our hearts and we don't even see it is that my sin's not that bad.
Absolutely. I mean, I have like this running list of passages that Christians don't really believe.
Yeah.
And one of them is the wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
I think most Christians don't actually believe that. Like, your sin gets rewarded in death.
Yeah.
Death gets paid by your sin. So like, you actually do you think you deserve to die because of the way that you've lived? No.
And even these simple thoughts, and I think we've talked about this, the part of maturing in Jesus is actually becoming more aware and humble to your sin nature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think in practice, I sin a lot less than I used to in the tangible activity of it. Mm-hmm. I have never been as aware. Like even this, you think about the moment of Jesus forgiving those who were murdering him. He says, they don't know what they're doing. Listen to that word. They don't know what they're doing. There was like 3 weeks ago, I was really frustrated by something, and I felt the desire to just be cruel in my heart towards somebody. The thought comes across my mind. This thing is literally the substance that nailed Jesus, my Lord, to the cross, and I didn't care. Like,
or I wanted to entertain it.
I still wanted it.
On it. Yeah.
Like, I get in practice that feeling inside of me, and the tangible killing of God is not the same thing. But there is something to be said, like, they didn't know what they were doing, and I did know what I was doing. Like David says, my sin is before me. Like, I just think part of the reason we get here is we are powerful minimizers of ourselves.
Yep.
But the second part is there is a revelation that Jonah needed, which is the entire point of the book of Jonah, and in many ways the continuation of what God reveals up into the person of Jesus. His God is different than us, and part of how he's different than us is he is a God of enemy love.
Yeah.
And he wants to teach us to be like him, but it's so contrary to our nature. And I think it is the place I find most Christians, they hate that part of God when they really have to confront it until you will let him shape you. And then you're like, oh, thank you, Jesus, that why? Because then the revelation comes like, me. I was your enemy.
I am your enemy.
Like I'm not in a special category. Like I was a loved enemy. So then something breaks. Breaks. But we have to let that place break. And we honor that some people walk through really heartbreaking, grievous stories. And we're not pretending like that isn't difficult to walk in the forgiveness of Jesus in. And so we get that. There's no minimization of that. Mm-hmm. That's actually why I don't like when people push on Jonah. I'm like, dude, you'd run away too. You don't even know what Nineveh was like. You don't know the evils of Assyria. I don't think we'd want them forgiven too. I mean, it would make Hitler look like a nice guy. And I don't is that how we would feel if the Lord, I don't say that even cheaply. I'm like, if the Lord said it, if they repent, if the Nazis repented in 1941, I would, whatever. Like, what would we think?
Yeah.
What would we think? Like, we have to see this is an even greater picture of the Jonah revelation of a God who loves his enemies, but also it's God's love and forgiveness isn't a lack of consequence or justice or accountability, which is again part of what we completely misunderstand.
Right.
And we have to have that holistic vision.
There was a moment I was talking to God and just, you know, like to understand the fullness of the cross, which we never will in this life. It's so glorious. Maybe best to say, the better we understand our sin, the better we understand the cross, the gift of the cross. And I was like wrestling through with the Lord and just asking, like, give me a greater revelation of what your enemy love is like. And I had this thought, and I was like, you know, when you're like proud of yourself, I'm like, oh, this is a good thought. My son was maybe 4, Jacob, 4 or 5. And I thought, God's enemy love is like me dying for someone who murdered Jacob. And I was like, that's deep. And the Lord immediately spoke to me and he says, no, my enemy love would be like you dying for someone who will murder Jacob tomorrow. And you're like, I wouldn't do it, but he would, and he did.
Yeah.
And how can I withhold forgiveness when that is the level that God did? Whew. It was really a moving moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just what makes us realize how different God is than us. How different the Father, Son, and Spirit are from us. And the desire of God to make things right. And this is often, even for us, I think, one of those missing pieces, because it is the desire of God, is to make things right. Mm-hmm. And actually, forgiveness is the road. It's the road. It's the countercultural road. And
it's so, I mean, even when you're talking about people being afraid they're a doormat, I'm like, oh my gosh, forgiveness takes the most strength out of anything in your Christian walk, I think.
Yeah.
It is one of the most powerful tools, if not, I'm just thinking through, like, if I believe this, you know, like using hyperbole of the kingdom, like there are a lot of things that Satan can make look good. Like he can fake it. He can give you the counterfeit of it. Like there's a lot of stuff that we walk towards in the kingdom that the enemy can have a subverted view of, but he can't subvert forgiveness. No, like there's no, like when you're walking in true forgiveness, it will break through things that nothing else can break through. And it actually is the most powerful way to move in our Christian walk. And when you look at the world, you're like, oh, no one looks at forgiveness, true forgiveness, and goes, I don't want a God like that.
No, it's crazy. And this is even the vision of again, there would never be an age, there would never be a culture, there would never be a moment that this wasn't central. But to speak to, if we are a real counterculture, mm-hmm. if the way of the kingdom of God is trying to invade the ways of the kingdom of men, if we are going to learn how to follow Jesus in a secular culture, if we're going to see the gospel take ground in a secular culture, the demonstration of the way of forgiveness, a people of forgiveness, is going to be, I think, maybe the single greatest mark of come believe in Jesus. Because there's a God who not only, because this is the truth, right? What you just said, he not only forgives, he heals. And they're the same road. Yeah. Forgiveness comes into place. Now that I know what real forgiveness is, and in the seasons of my life, I go, this is real forgiveness, and then this is real healing. Like this really hurtful thing, you can touch it and it doesn't hurt anymore. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it didn't happen,
right?
But it's actually healed. Like you poke it as much as you want. It's like a dead thing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, nobody's healed. oh, nobody's forgiven. Yeah. And I think the heartbreaking thing is that it's not because people don't. The story's not always that people don't want to.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually part of where people get so frustrated, is they're like, I've tried. Mm-hmm. I've tried to forgive. I've tried to stand on the promise of God, and yet here I am, even more bitter. And I think they have tried. I don't think they haven't come to a conclusion because they haven't wanted or put real effort or tried to follow Jesus. I just think we've missed it. So let me.
Yeah. So you talked about what it isn't.
Yes.
What is it? Like, what is forgiveness?
I want to tell a story in my own life, but it's connected to Matthew 18. And I want to set up Matthew 18, tell the story, and then I want you to really unpack what you see happening from the story further. So Matthew 18, Peter comes, Jesus is in a conversation with him. It begins with this idea of who's the greatest, and so much there, but Jesus pulls this child to himself, and who wants to be the greatest must become like this little child. It's certainly this nod to childlikeness at times, but really it's this sense of the child has no name, has no reputation in Jewish culture. Jesus is saying, if you want to be great in the kingdom of God, you must become like this child who takes on the name of their father. And Jesus is teaching them how to take on the name of their father, this counterculture to be great in the kingdom of God. And then he talks about reconciliation and forgiveness and these different things. And right in the middle of these conversations, Peter's like, okay, Jesus, you're teaching us these countercultural ways. If somebody sins against me, how many times should I sin? 7? And I love this because I think Peter really is coming like with this like bold, brave God number that's going to feel like a lot.
Yeah, and even specifically, well, in the ESV, I don't know if it says in the NRSV, he says, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Yeah. So it's not like he did one sin and I have to keep forgiving him. It's like a sin, a forgiving, a sin, like a new one, a new offense.
And in every culture, but in Jewish honor and shame culture, like you brought offense to somebody, relationship was over. Yeah. Like it was like there you cut and so this is even a radical statement. But of course, Jesus responds with not 7, but 77 times. I assume you know the one story in the Bible. This is the little Bible trivia. What is the one other place in Scripture? Only one that talks about 7s and 77s.
It's in Genesis 4, where Lamech.
Unsurprised that you know it, but it's also annoying that you know it.
Gives this radically arrogant proclamation of his own righteousness and revenge. Yeah. It's a sobering, on the edge of spooky picture of human sin.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to that because I think it's important, but Jesus actually,
he's referring to
he's
that.
He's not actually giving this like cosmic unending number. Yeah. He's basically pulling back to the story of the evil of humanity, 7 times 77 revenge. And he's like, we're like that, just in the opposite way. we're the anti-Lamechs. We're the countercultural Lamechs. He's like, as Lamech gave himself over to hatred, so we will give ourselves over to forgiveness. It's so crazy.
The same, yeah.
And the disciples so then he tells this parable, the parable of a king with 2 servants. And this servant owed the king a great amount of money. He was owed to him. He comes to the king. He falls before him. He begs him. He says, I do not have what to pay. I mean, it's an unpayable debt, a massive amount. Begs the king for mercy. The king grants him mercy and forgives him his debt. And it says that the servant that was forgiven was on his way out from the king's courts, and another fellow servant had owed him a little bit of money. Not a ton, but a real debt. And it says that he seizes him. Like you can just get the picture. He seizes him by his robes and he says, I demand you give me what you owe me. Pay me back now. The servant falls at his fellow servant's feet. Says, I do not have it, but I can get it to you. Just give me time. I will pay you back. But the servant who had just been forgiven did not have mercy on his fellow servant. And he threw him in jail until he could pay back the debt, which is an ironic picture meant to be, though it was a common practice. Be pretty difficult to pay back your debts when you have no ability to do anything about them. But this picture, and then just Jesus telling this parable, all the other servants see it. They come back to the king, and they say that the servant you just did this. He calls him back, and this is what he says: "You wicked servant." And then Jesus has some pretty important teachings that he talks about forgiveness that are connected to it. So this is, to me, Matthew 18 is probably the most central picture in the Bible around forgiveness, though there's lots of other elements to it. When we lived in Seattle, I was walking through a situation with a friend and a coworker that really hurt me. Yeah. Really hurt me deeply. And I felt dismissed. I felt accused. I felt wronged. And to some extent, I was those things.
Right. Part of forgiveness is we can't dismiss the actual
It was not
pain.
A misconception.
Right.
I really, I felt belittled. I felt judged. And because I, to an extent, had been. I was really hurt. and I was processing through it, and it really grieved me. It was the breaking of some relationships, and I felt abandoned, and it was really hard. And I remember that I've only had what I would say are 3 distinctly spiritual dreams. I may have had more, but these are the few that are above them all. It happens very rarely in my life. I believe God speaks through dreams. I think that the Spirit communicates through them. It's just, and I wish I had more of them. It doesn't happen very often. But I remember I had this dream, and it was so interesting because the dream started just with a bag of money.
Yeah.
Like a Robin Hood sack of money. Like I was just literally, it made me think of the cartoon Robin Hood, right? This sack of money. And then it zoomed out, and I was holding it. And I remember it was the wildest thing in the dream. I felt this greed. Like I was holding the bag, but I was consumed by the desire for it. It was mine. It was mine. I deserved it. Nobody could have it. I was consumed by my longing for it, possession of it.
Yeah.
And then the picture zoomed out a little bit, and I was holding this bag over this person's head. And I realized that it was what I felt owed by him. And then the picture zoomed out, and this person had multiple arms. Many arms, and was holding bags over others' heads. And it was just suddenly I woke up and I heard the Lord say, "Phil, you are the wicked servant." Jeez. Like I knew that the Matthew 18 wasn't in the dream, but it was immediately, I understood it even in the dream. It was the picture. And it's not a fun thing to hear Jesus tell you. It didn't change anything. I knew he loved me. He was teaching me. And I was the servant who could walk in and beg the king, "Forgive me," and could walk out and look at my fellow servant and demand a payment he could not pay me. He couldn't pay me. And it grieved me, and it really broke my heart. And I immediately moved towards that situation in a true heart of humility and forgiveness. But I also had to tell Jesus, I'm really hurt, and I was really wronged. I feel really wronged. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's where Jesus began to teach me through the scriptures and what real forgiveness is, which for me was not an effort I could do on my own. Was not some imagination that I could pretend like that situation didn't happen, because it did. And it wasn't this emotional. I realized there was a real debt. There was a real debt. And forgiveness was actually about who I entrusted that debt to.
Right. And I think that is really the key when we are thinking about our own or talking to people. Like, cheap forgiveness doesn't fix anything. It doesn't fix your wound. It doesn't pay back what you are owed, and it doesn't give even the proper weight to what God has done for you. But like, true forgiveness is saying, this person does owe me.
Yeah.
They do owe me.
Or it did happen.
Yeah.
This debt is real.
This debt is real.
Yeah.
I can't pretend it's not real. And I also they can't pay it back.
No.
So I have to give this debt to Jesus and trust him to pay it back to me in whatever the wound is, for that healing to be paid back to me. And also, then it's up to him to get the debt back from that person, and whatever he wants to do with it, he can. Right? Like, it's
a radical picture.
It's a radical picture.
And I think this
and it dismissing the debt doesn't help forgiveness.
No.
That's not a good way to,
because it is actually essentially not forgiveness.
Right.
Because the core element of forgiveness is who is the owner of sin. And this is where people minimize theology that they should not minimize. I have no authority. When Jesus took all sin upon himself, the scriptures say he purchased us, and he now absorbed and took possession of our sin. He then died and rose again and is the authority of all things. Sin has no mastery or hold over him. He's the Lord of it. So actually, every sin I've ever committed, every sin you've ever committed, every sin every person has committed, not only Jesus died to absolve it, but he owns it. He bought it. It's his. And the reality is that when I am walking in a place of hurt or offense or woundedness that's real, Jesus is the only authority, and he is the only person who has authority, and he is the only person who can follow through, the only person of justice, the only person of redemption, the only person of forgiveness. It's him. And the recognition of what real forgiveness is actually going, this debt that I want you to pay back, I feel owed by you. I'm canceling that you are the one who can pay me back.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it to Jesus. It belongs to him anyways. I'm entrusting it to him. So forgiveness is actually not forgetting in the sense of the way just dismissiveness. Forgiveness is not just getting rid of this feeling. Forgiveness is the active work of covenant. I am making a covenant. If you hurt me, when I forgive you, I'm actually saying, Emily, I make a covenant with you that I no longer hold you accountable to pay this debt back to me. I cancel it from you.
Yeah.
Depending on we might need to figure out some things on trust or reconciliation, all this stuff. That's where we have to get into some of the complicated pieces. But forgiveness is saying, I now look to the Lord to minister back to me this debt and to meet me in this place, to help me walk through. And the process of forgiveness is a single decision with a road I must follow.
Yeah.
But and this is the piece we don't understand and we don't walk in, because the reality is that when I do that, when I transfer that I feel owed by you because you did this thing to me, forgiveness now becomes the place where I actually move into a season of contending. To experience the transforming, healing power of Jesus is the only one who can meet me in this debt, because he is the possessor, the authority, and the forgiver of it. And it's that process of actually letting Jesus be the Lord of my debts that actually begins to move into the place of forgiveness.
Right. Like the pain I feel because of the wound or the anger, like it's not that you, like you said, it's not an emotion. You don't stop feeling those things when you forgive someone, but then you go to Jesus, you're like, hey, this wound, it's up to you. I gave you the debt. Like, it's up to you. You got to fix this wound. You got to heal this hurt. Like what, like Jesus, how are you repaying the debt to me? And not in this like arrogant, like he owes you, but he is the only one who can repay the debt.
Yeah,
and he repays it in healing. And
my soul feels a wound.
Yeah, right.
My soul feels pain. It really happened. Like reclaiming, right? You almost have these really broken edges of the church. You've got the side of the church that has a right conviction around new creation, but basically preaches that nothing should ever affect you or hurt you, and that you just that's all the flesh. It's all this. I'm only new creation. I'm like, we need to reclaim the spirituality of the Psalms that have a lot of room for life. And then you have the other broken end of the church that is basically just secular trauma therapy, and you're bound to your woundedness, and
it's your identity,
it's, all this stuff that we can't. But the reality,
you have no culpability for the way you act, because
just the wild nature. But reclaiming that picture, and I think this is the beauty, is when we understand real forgiveness, what it does is it not only moves us into the place of healing and transformation. It not only begins to turn the stories, but what it does is it positions us into that process of becoming the true counterculture in a world filled with indebted people who have been wronged and wrong, who the only avenue out is Jesus. And when we actually begin to be people who put radical forgiveness on display, it becomes the lighthouse of the King and the kingdom in the midst of a broken world. We have to, in this picture, what I think we have to see, forgiveness really is that I now take my woundedness unto Jesus. And his word, his way, his love, his power, his authority, and I contend for the way of Jesus to manifest in my life. When we learn how to do that, and I actually think it teaches you all of these things that you didn't even think were connected to forgiveness, but it'll change our lives, and it has changed our lives.
Yeah, and I think a picture of this is the story of Joseph at the end of Genesis. So his brothers want to murder him. Reuben's like, don't murder him, presumably because Jacob is mad at Reuben for sleeping with his wife, so he's trying to get back in the good graces of his father, wants to save his father's favorite son, who he should be as not favorite, but like he should have all of the benefits that Jacob gives to Joseph rightly belong to Reuben. So Reuben wants to save Joseph. So he gets sold, but they wanted to murder him. They had murder in their hearts. And then, of course, Joseph goes to Egypt, gets to be second in command out of this faithful and trusting the Lord to his story, right?
Yeah.
In every season, Joseph is faithfully entrusting his abuse and circumstances unto the Lord. The Lord draws him into the second position in Egypt, equal to Pharaoh in everything but name.
Yeah.
Then there's a famine. Joseph has stored up food for 7 years, and so his brothers come to Egypt. We know the story. He finally reveals himself. Jacob moves from Canaan back to Egypt. They're all living there happily. Presumably, forgiveness and reconciliation has happened, right? That's where you get to. And then we get to chapter 50, and we see that Jacob dies. And there's this end to the story that maybe we don't get to because we don't read all of Genesis. But the brothers are like, hey, Joseph might have been nice to us because he loves dad. But now that dad is dead, he might punish us for our evil. They know. And so they go to Joseph, and what's crazy, they don't even ask for forgiveness. They don't say, we're sorry, forgive us. They say, hey, dad said forgive us. Like they're always using this like power struggle of the favoritism of Jacob. And so they say, forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father, because this is what dad said to do. Yeah. And then there's this line from Joseph, which we do probably most of us know. He wept and he said, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring good about for many people, that they should be kept alive as they are today. And we love this idea of what you meant for evil, God turns to good.
Yeah.
Because then we look at like our lives, we're like, oh, well, someone could try to hurt us. But when you actually look at Joseph's life, their murderous intent, God used Joseph's life and suffering to save the very people who tried to murder him. And Joseph, instead of being like, that's really unfair, like you're using my life to redeem the life of the people who tried to murder me, he goes, am I in the place of God? Which is the total opposite of Lamech, right? Lamech says, I am in the place of God. And where God said to Cain, you'll be avenged 7 times, Lamech says to everyone, I get to set the own standard for my vengeance, and it's 70 times 7. Joseph flips that and says, I'm not in the place of God. I don't have the authority to enact vengeance upon you.
Yeah.
Joseph understands that vengeance belongs to the Lord. And he's like, how could I not forgive? I am not in the place of God to enact vengeance. And when you really think about the cost of it, how many of us would have this perspective? Like if we had to suffer, and granted, Joseph's story ends well, right? He's loved, beloved, powerful, rich, but like he suffered.
Suffered a lot.
For a
long time.
Falsely accused. Ooh, I hate being falsely accused. Thrown in jail. Like physical suffering, mental suffering, emotional suffering, right?
I mean, your brothers wanting to murder you.
Your brothers wanting to murder you.
Abandoned.
Not seeing your father
in jail
ever again.
for a long time. Yeah,
like,
lots of stuff.
And for God to come to you at the end and be like, hey, these people that wanted to murder you, I used your life to save their life.
Yeah.
That's my vengeance. Like that's the way I repay things. And for Joseph to be like, why would I be any different than my God? Yeah. Oh.
Well, I think this is the right word to end this part on. We're going to have a second immediate kind of conversation, because we want to walk through this holistically, as we've kind of named these pieces of forgiveness, to actually go, okay, what is the unconditional kind of theology we need to know, and then what is the pastoral practice of how we live?
What does it look like?
So we're gonna get into that. But I think this picture, could we believe that God is so good and faithful that actually he can take even the most harmful things and produce resurrection life from them?
And are we people who are willing to say, Jesus, use my life to redeem the life of those who sinned against me? Yeah. Use my life. Don't just do it in their life far away. Use my life through my forgiveness of them to redeem them.
And I would say maybe a great place to listen. I don't know, people are listening to this. They're going to be in lots of different places. And I know when we talk about forgiveness and pain, it's going to poke on lots of things. Here's the word I think we need to hear. You can't take the place of God. So whether you want to or don't want to, you can't. Here's the warning. Every person who will listen to this, you're going to be hurt. Welcome to life. Like Anne Lamott is right. Earth is forgiveness school. And there's going to be a few of those hurts that are like big. There's not a person unscathed. You're going to hurt people. You're accidentally, you're going to intentionally. This is tough. This is every human story. And what I will tell you is you're either, by choosing to be God, going to be Lamech. It's the end of choosing to take the place of God. Or you're going to be Joseph by choosing not to take the place of God. So my warning is actually that thing we do where we want to usurp the place of God because we don't trust him. We don't want him. We don't want his way, whatever reason that might be. It doesn't go where we want it to go. Yeah. It never does. So I both charge us not to take the place of God, but I warn us bad things happen when we do. And I think this is the beautiful truth is that we actually not only get to step into what Jesus has done for us, we get to be equipped by his power to do it. Jesus is the forgiver. And even in all of the places I don't want to, he can walk with me to learn how to, and he can change me to become like him. So may we in this season as Christians, and I think this has happened in a secular way that we don't really even understand, may we stop taking God's place, and may we start seeing the foolishness of what happens when we do. Yeah. Last thought?
Oh my gosh, my last thought is actually that Joseph is like, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, because I'm not taking the place of God. But in Eve and the serpent, what this Eve meant for good, the serpent meant for evil when she did take the place of God.
Next podcast, Revelation. I think you're right. Genesis is such a crazy, powerful story, isn't it? The parallels.
It is. Of course. It's one of the best. I mean, it's one of the greatest pieces of literature of all time.
No,
she thought it was good. In her eyes, it was good. The enemy meant it for evil. And then she does take the place of God, deciding what is good.
Well, and what has happened to an entire secular generation, but falling into the temptation of Eve, that we are the ones who have the authority to determine what is good. Right? We've said this in another podcast, which if you haven't listened to, I'm very offended. I'll deal with it.
I'm not offended.
I'll take it to Jesus though. But that place of going, actually, the tree of good and evil was about who has the right to name good,
yes,
and who has the right to name evil. What Eve and Adam together chose was the autonomy. Right. God, you don't get to define this. We get to define
Genesis
this.
1, God saw it was good. Genesis 3, Eve saw that it was good.
And that picture of this is what a secular culture has done to us. We get to be the autonomous authorities of naming good, good, and evil, evil,
and
on our own
forgiveness,
terms.
forgiveness.
And forgiveness, forgiveness. And we have to go, oh, I've done that. I've done that. Here you go, Jesus. You get to call good, good. You get to call evil, evil.
Because who am I to be in the place of God?
Who am I to be in the place of God?